Welcome to the Academy of Esports podcast. I am your host, James O'Hagan. This week I am with Derek Watford. He is the co-founder of High Point Gamer down in Florida. Derek, thank you so much for being on the Academy of Esports podcast today.
Hey, thanks, James. I appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Well, and it's great. You're the second person from Tampa who I've had on the podcast. The first was Marcus Howard. So I know that it's kind of unique to find Florida and Tampa, but I know that Tampa is a growing hotbed for esports. So it's great to have representation here on the podcast today. So again, thank you for being here.
Appreciate it.
So let's dive into this real quickly. The first time that I think I've seen you twice now, but the most recent time I've seen you speak was at it was a hip hop and culture conference. It was talking a lot about gaming and the overlaps in gaming and gaming culture there. How did you find yourself in the gaming culture realm? I mean, what has attracted you to it? What has brought you to it and helped you to become a founder of High Point Gamer?
So the gaming has always been an outlet for me. Even when I started out young, like that would be my choice thing to spend my money on when I got Christmas money or chore money. It was to go down to the local 7-Eleven and bust some heads on Street Fighter. Yeah.
Did every 7-Eleven have a Street Fighter?
I think they all so. Did. I think they realized the moneymaker. I wonder how much money was made off of Street Fighter back then.
I could tell you this. I didn't spend more than probably 50 cents a day going in there, but I easily dropped $5 to $10 on Slurpees and hot dogs, just watching and hanging out.
I wouldn't be surprised if as a kid, as a youth, I spent at least 20 grand in a year on Street Fighter.
Whoa.
Yeah. It was, that was my, while the rest of my friends were interested in taking their money and eating at Dunkin' Donuts or something, my money went to playing Street Fighter over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, and it's amazing where we would find these competitions. I mean, it's like you just walk into a place, you may not even know it, but you see the game from a distance, the Street Fighter console, usually at least the 7-Eleven I went to in San Jose had it straight up front, like right by the door, like it was inviting you in. And it didn't matter what neighborhood you were in. It didn't matter who was in there playing. You just stepped up, put your quarter on the console, and you waited. And everybody respected the quarters, the quarter hold and all that. So
it was definitely a community bridge. And back then, I definitely didn't recognize that's what it was because my community was predominantly Black, but our 7-Eleven was, I guess you could say, in the front of our neighborhood, which was predominantly white on that side. And so going to that 7-Eleven to play, I played against Asian kids, I played against white kids, Italians, and the diversity that came through to play Street Fighter connected me to relationships that I wouldn't have had if I just stayed down in my dead end within my community, which like what most of my friends did, and they didn't have those connections. Like they weren't invited to certain birthday parties or they didn't learn about certain events going on because they literally just stayed in their community that didn't open them up to diversity. So I'm thankful for video games for that in my life.
I'll piggyback off of that too, because the one I went to in downtown San Jose. Now San Jose nowadays, of course, Silicon Valley and all that stuff is completely different. When I was a kid, San Jose was going through gentrification. Okay. And right by San Jose State University, I was a high school junior and taking a class at the college, and yeah, that 7-Eleven was right off campus, right on the edge of, like you said, it was like the spot where everybody in the neighborhood came. You had college kids, you had locals, and you had, again, all races and socioeconomics coming to that space. Because again, 7-Eleven is an American brand. It's almost like McDonald's. I call that I call that the American embassy if I go overseas. So because you always know you can find a bathroom and you can find some food that's familiar in there.
Yes.
Right? So. Sure. Yeah, it was kind of like that. But again, we're not here to just talk about our Street Fighter experiences in 7-Eleven. No, it's funny that we find commonality around that. But so now you have High Point. So going from a 7-Eleven where you're making a lot of interesting connections, dropping a lot of coins on playing the game, how did that carry you into starting High Point?
So my background from a professional standpoint is I'm a military veteran. My degree is in commercial art, so I was in the private sector when I got out of the military. private tech world, doing their marketing and branding and UX UI for their software. So I did that professionally, and then I competed in video games and SOCOM and Overwatch or Call of Duty in the first iterations in the evening, not realizing that I was part of this ecosystem or world of esports at the time. It was just, okay, this is how I decompress. I'm married, young, with 2 kids, and living somewhere where I don't have friends or anyone else to engage with. So, hey, what way can I decompress? And it was video games.
Okay.
And then so from that transition, when I in the corporate space, because I became familiar with branding and marketing, me and my co-founder Dion Wren, we decided, like, what do we want to do? Because we also are big in the community. Like, we care about uplifting the community and giving opportunities. So we're like, what can we do for teens in our community to give them something positive to do, as well as put some money in their pocket? And we thought, hey, why don't we put on Madden or NBA 2K tournaments? And so we started doing that and trying to be official and making sure that we did everything by the book so that it was a tournament that people were proud to win at and then also interested in coming to. That's where I realized esports is actually a thing and actually a industry. And that began my journey, to be honest.
And I know that I see it every day, esports events going online, LinkedIn, whatever. And I can't help but notice they're missing out on a lot of demographics in our country. Again, Latoya Peterson wrote a fantastic article a while ago about why aren't more Black kids going pro when it comes to esports. Where have we really missed the mark? I mean, you're talking about you're putting on tournaments, you're doing things that are attracting, obviously, you said kids from your community. But where, in the general sense, are we really missing on this whole esports thing in getting kids? Why aren't we attracting more African American children or children of color into esports? Because it's still, you still look at events, you still go to, especially collegiate, and you still see white male or Asian male. You don't see the diversity that we see of people who are wanting to enter this space or are in this space. What from your perspective are we seeing that's being missed?
I think the main thing, the issue is that we underestimate the availability of technology in diverse communities, meaning that when I was competing in SOCOM or Call of Duty when it first came out, when you first were able to play Halo online, in order to do that, you had to have internet that could support that. And then you also needed to understand the technology of how to set up your modem, and because you couldn't just plug it in and do it. Like, you had to do special settings so that you can get through the firewall, et cetera. And in most communities, if I can't afford the internet and I'm not affording a computer and I'm not connected to anyone inside my household that understands the technical aspect of how things work, that blocks me out. And I stay committed to doing traditional sports where, traditional sports is plug and play. I've seen how that works. You dribble the ball, you shoot it, or you catch the ball and you run it. But when it comes to gaming, there's a big digital divide there. And I think we underestimate a digital divide that's present in the Black community, because we can look to esports and see people, oh, no, I see Black people that participate. I know this person. I see Sonic Fox. But culturally, when we think about gamers and how they participate and get together, culturally, where is that person that is participating that you see Black in a League of Legends tournament or watching, et cetera? Culturally, he's not in the Black culture in doing that, because Black culture would have him doing something else specifically. So therefore, that demographic that is culturally Black, meaning just from an urban standpoint with low opportunity, isn't exposed. So therefore, they don't have the thought process that this is a thing to do. They don't have anyone to connect to that they would want to be like that's doing it. I know we like to shout out Ninja and how much money he's making a month, and that's cool. But most of the kids that I talk to or deal with, they have no interest in being Ninja or being like Ninja or anything of that sort. So therefore, they miss out on the opportunity. And I think in the industry, we also have to recognize that the people that put on tournaments or help grow esports are gamers and tech guys, that they're not diversity coaches or expertise. Like, they literally just built a community based around whatever game they were interested in. And it's really not their job to go out and figure out, like, how can I get other people that aren't doing this to do this after I've put all this work into getting the community up to what I've done. And then you have the other side of the investors that are coming in and putting in their money. They don't care about trying to bridge the gap between diversity. I just want my millions of dollars that I put into this thing to come back. That's my number one priority. Now, we can do diversity along the way and my bottom line is still good, sure, but I'm not going to make that the main mission of my business.
And I know with us in schools, this is something that we are trying to tackle. I see access to esports as an equity issue, especially when they were talking about the career opportunities, the branding opportunities, the collegiate opportunities that are coming through this. What's interesting that I've seen with COVID, which I think speaks to one of the issues you're talking about, is I was surprised at just how big of a, I won't say digital divide, I'll say digital poverty in a sense, because again, we live in an area where there wasn't availability of internet access. It was just the cost of it. And again, when you're looking at other costs, the things that get shut off first, right? Well, let's think about the things that get shut off first. Your cell phone and your internet service are going to be the things shut off first versus your electricity versus your water. Evictions are down. But what COVID has allowed us to do, and we're doing this at least in my school district, which I think is helping the situation around digital poverty, is we said, look, we got families who this is going to be an academic need. They need to have this in their home. We're wiring home internet access now. So so now hopefully what we'll see is, again, this opening up of digital culture into homes that maybe it wasn't, it was fragile. It was something that was like seen as a luxury. And now it's like, to me, internet access should be just as basic as water and electricity and heat, right? These are things, this should be a utility at this point, in my mind, at least.
Yes, I agree.
Is it going to be schools who are going to maybe broaden this out, or is there going to have to be something else, that there's going to be like a middle of the road kind of meeting in all this?
There's going to need to be a middle of the road. And the reason is, you could provide the technology and you could provide the access, but let's say if you're talking to a 10-year-old, 8-year-old, and you say, hey, now you have internet at the home. When he has tech issues or when he's trying to figure out how to plug this in, what does he need to do? He can't ask mom because mom didn't come from that. Brothers, sisters, etc. So the knowledge of knowing how to operate the technology is still going to be a missing link that school can't do, because school is literally just talking to the student.
Well, I know that one of the things that we're trying to do is, at least we're trying to open up the types of games that we're playing. So hopefully we can attract in, again, not what we're finding is it isn't just boys, obviously, who are playing these games, but I'm really surprised at the answers that are coming from girls, not just of the games that they play, but why they play the games that they play. I did a very non-scientific study last year with 7th and 8th grade girls. And I asked them, I said, what video games are you playing? And yeah, a lot of them said, Sims. And do you know what the number one game was that these girls are playing?
Is it Call of Duty?
Call of Duty, yeah. You know what was number 2?
Fortnite?
No, NBA 2K.
Oh, really?
And I said, why? Why are you all playing this? They said, well, our brothers do. I mean, but it used to be in the past, don't give the girls a controller. Now what I'm hearing is the girls are either getting the controller or demanding the controller a lot more than what used to happen. I guess. So, and
there's still some education and support that we need to provide for that audience to come on board more so confidently within the esports and gaming space. Like they're out there, but because of the culture of gaming from a online multiplayer toxicity standpoint, it keeps most females either quiet on the microphone. And thus, if you're quiet on the microphone, that means you subconsciously feel like you don't have a voice, or that your voice should be quieted. And so therefore your likelihood to engage in a deeper role within that space is a lot lower than someone that feels comfortable and accepted to talk on the mic and engage. There's a psychological connection.
Yeah, we see that a lot in education, where there's been kids. I had one, she was the captain last year of one of our Overwatch teams. She hadn't played the game in 2 years.
Oh,
because
wow.
she had just been so beaten down in her online experience. Again, I call it a Lord of the Flies experience, right? The book Lord of the Flies, where it's
Yes.
a bunch of boys left on an island, and they set up their
Do
own
what they
society.
want and
Yeah, and then all
say
of a
what they
sudden it's just,
want.
yeah, and if you don't fit, you're found out and you are kicked out or chastised or pushed away.
I
But
have to admit, there was a point in SOCOM where I became conditioned to the mic because every time I would talk, even if I'm just communicating what's going on, because of how I was winning or how well I was doing, I would get berated with nigger comments and be like, well, let me be quiet so that no one knows what I sound like. So then I'm not attacked and I don't have the whole team doing team killing of me just because,
mm-hmm.
So that's
that's
real.
that's really so. It's we talk about code switching too. Was it more like a code switch kind of thing?
I don't know if I would even consider it code switch because like totally disconnecting is totally different than trying to be something else. Like it's
Okay.
not like I kept the mic on and changed my voice or dialect or anything. It just was I just won't talk. I won't communicate that they're planting the bomb or whatever.
Well, again, your company is built around branding, and again, around trying to open up new avenues for kids. We're seeing, of course, the branding of esports change very rapidly as more dollars rush into this, as more people start to see opportunity for investment. A lot of the big companies, of course, who again in the past may have been very focused on the white Asian male population, League of Legends crowd, even Overwatch in a lot of ways. But we're starting to see some diversification, at least. There's starting to be investment in the diversity. But is that, I don't want to say inauthentic, but I mean, are the overtures that are being made, because esports has been all about, so like, oh, we're so grassroots, and if you're not from here, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But then at the same time, they're trying to invite in diversity and market off of that, right? Am I reading that wrong, or am I getting that right?
Right. I just think it's the power that be really don't know what you do, and to the defense, they think they're doing enough, but aren't doing enough, but know they're not doing enough because they're not close enough to the mirror, if that makes sense.
What do you mean by close enough to the mirror?
So if you think of diversity, in most cases, people think of it from a race standpoint, a color standpoint. So if I have an organization or if I'm providing an event and I can point to, say, a Black person that's attending, I could point to a Hispanic that's attending, I'm assuming it's diverse. We're diverse because we're not saying you can't come in here. We're not stopping anyone from participating. Glad to have them, but they don't recognize the person probably fits within the culture that they've already established around the organization. True diversity is someone that doesn't fit, doesn't necessarily belong, but you make a way for them to participate so that they can grow their own community alongside of your community within it, so that it's a larger community and everyone has a chance to engage in a true engagement, because we know how toxic gaming is. So therefore, diversity has to become a priority to us, for those of us that are doing actual activations and esports engagements, because we need people to get together in person to understand that there is differences and that there is a common thing that we're working towards, so that we can minimize the toxicity that goes on online because of our ignorance and disconnect from those other groups of people.
And that's, again, with education, that's one of the hardest things that we sometimes do, because we make it hard for ourselves, I should say, because whenever people are starting programs, they say, well, what do I need to do to start? I said, decide now what you want your teams to look like. Like, don't, for example, if your school, our goal is, and we still haven't met it, but our goal is we want our teams to be a cross section of our school. So if the demographics were this, the team should be this. If it's 50-50 male, female, it should be 50-50 male, female. We want it to look like that. I think too often what people do is they say, ooh, here's esports. And they get that low hanging fruit, that stuff that's real easy to access right away. And they're happy. And they call it a day.
Right.
And I've seen too, where there's companies who are out there right now who are marketing again around diversity and esports. And it's like, you go into their Discord. There's one company, I did it even yesterday. I went in their Discord and I went, and they have a memes channel, and I went through it, and I went, like, how can you say you're all about diversity and you're not even moderating your damn memes channel in your Discord server? I think you're laughing because you've maybe have seen this or heard of this, or
I witness it not just on the player audience level, but from a professional level, and that's the part that usually rubs me the wrong way. It's like, okay, I get the gaming community is what it is currently, but in the professional community, I would expect more sensitivity or more understanding to the importance of diversity, and for the work that is needed by all of us to encourage and move along the of diversity. But when I go into discords of professionals and I see the comments, like, especially a good example, there's a educational one that I'm a part of that I go in. And when Play Versus first started out, the level of bashing that they did for Delaney in regards to Play Versus was more centered around not even the business of Play Versus, him is what he posts on Instagram, what music he listens to, what selfies that does he have with other people that are in the rap community. To me, all of those things aren't diverse, supportive, and it speaks to the level of prejudice within in the esports industry on a level that you wonder, is it obvious to those that are doing it, or is it so sublime that they think they're not being prejudiced or biased in any form or fashion because they're just stating their opinion and how they feel and being honest?
I got to tell you that Delane and I, we've had some. We don't always we disagree more than we agree on a lot of things, and he and I have had it out a few times. Some very loud conversations. We're both very strong-headed men in that sense, and passionate about what we're doing, and we think we have the right way. And again, we agree to disagree, but it's always going to be, I think, respectful in that sense. Again, as an educator and somebody who's stepping into education, there is a lot of pushback because the way Play Versus operates, and I'm saying this only just to maybe, I'm not saying to explain away any of that. I'm just saying from what I see is, I see a company that is trying to step into the education space without necessarily always fully understanding what it is that we're trying to do in education. We're not a pipeline to the pros. We're trying to, again, give kids safe places to play and engaging kids in ways and trying to keep them in school. And I think that sometimes it gets lost, especially with the polarization that we've had in the country and the way that we are modeling and having these discussions online. So much stuff gets lost. And there's people who think they're helping the conversation. And really what they're doing is, as you're pointing out, they're taking the conversation down and perpetuating the problems that we have in esports around the culture that is real in here. It isn't just Riot. It isn't just Blizzard Activision with their, when they silenced the gentleman who supported Hong Kong. Yeah, there's so many levels and layers to this right now that all our dirty laundry, and that's the problem too with esports, whether it's education, pros, amateur, all that dirty laundry, everybody has the need to put it out public for some reason. Like it's all out there. Like I don't know any industry.
Is that the tech culture? Is it because we're from the tech culture? Is that?
My background is an educator first, but I've been involved in IT for basically since I started as an educator as well. And I've been in the education side of things, and I don't see the toxicity there as much as friends of mine who still live back in California who will tell me about all the, fake signaling and all that other stuff that goes on in Silicon Valley and all that. So again, it's very different worlds, but again, what we're trying to do in education is at least trying to insulate or create these walled gardens that are going to give kids positive experiences that hopefully is going to transform the way they interact on Discord or the way that they talk to others or, how they brand themselves. The biggest question that I ask kid is what is your brand and what does your digital footprint look like? So right. When you mentor young kids, let's talk to that question. What are some of the tips that you give around branding yourself or around mentoring somebody who is maybe trying to figure out what their brand is? Because a lot of us as educators, we're not marketers. We don't have a background in that, but we have kids coming to us because they trust us to say like, hey, how do I do this? Or what do I do? Or where can I go to get some additional help for a way to market or brand myself?
So my primary advice when I give to young gamers that are interested in being in the influencer space is to not be so consumed with their escape into the video game world that they isolate or neglect their other channels of brand engagement, such as Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Make that digital footprint and make it intentionally. Like, know that I'm posting this because why? What am I trying to do? What am I trying to reinforce? And what goal am I'm headed towards? If you're not trying to reinforce anything or you're not trying to head towards a goal, why post it? So if you're thinking, oh, I want to reinforce I'm a badass at school, so maybe I'm going to show that I'm sitting here with my cousin and I'm rolling weed, or maybe I want to show that I'm cool and my parents are well off, so let me show my clothes and shoes that I just purchased. How does that coincide with your gaming brand, and what are you trying to do? What is your monetary goal? If you don't have a monetary goal, if you're just like, I want a bunch of followers on Twitch, and not understanding what that means or what that requires of you, you need to take a step back and rethink it. Not just look at what you see from a popularity standpoint, like, oh, I see Ninja doing this, so I'm gonna go and do that. Not realizing that Ninja has a whole production schedule and a timeline and a social
And a
media
team.
strategy. You're right. So think about it from that aspect, and to recognize that they're already building a brand and that they are in the best location to build their brand within their school because they have their friends and their peers, which automatically can just help drive numbers of engagement so that the people that don't know you, when they come along, they say, oh, okay, this person is doing such and such. He is consistent based on this engagement that he's getting. Especially now where colleges are allowing you to monetize your own likeness. Oh man, kids need to start early with their branding.
I a couple of years ago, I posted a tweet about how, esports is going to be the thing that's going to drive the NCAA to finally, have to sort it out, right? They're going to have to figure out, how do we pay football players? How do we pay basketball players?
And it
Because
was
again,
that.
I mean, these kids, yeah, they can't monetize football right now, but what if they're a gamer on the side? Why can they not, make money off that? And of course, I see the slippery slope. Of course, it would be like, well, donors, will go on to their channel and subscribe to them. I'm like, okay, so what? You talk to me about capitalism, you talk about free. Don't talk to me about, amateur athletes anymore. I've seen how much money these football programs are making. I've seen how much money the basketball programs are making. They are funding large school athletic programs where there aren't necessarily equal access, in facilities and things like that. But yeah, it's the ability to market yourself right now and still have your life and still go to college is something that I don't think we've ever seen this before. Not in the not ever. This is like in the last 10, 15 years that this has really become your brand, yourself, how you live your life can be your business.
Yes. I've been trying to find a way to articulate that on LinkedIn because I don't think the business sector recognizes how that even changes the employment workforce culture going forward. Like before, like our generation or older is like, okay, I'm gonna get a job, and then that job is going to define me and where I am as far as my status within my community and world, right? Mm-hmm. But now, younger generations have the ability to establish prior to that where they are and where they fit within their world or community, and they're not going to be willing to give that up just for a job. Meaning that I'm not going to put my brand that I've spent 18, 20 years building to the side because now I'm working for Nielsen or whoever I'm working for 9 to 5-ish. And businesses are going to have to learn how am I going to be able to support an employee and still allow them to build their brand even as my employee when we're not used to that.
I personally even come up against that. My supervisor tells me I tweet too much about esports and not about what I do in my regular job. And I'm like, hey, my virtual program is good. Like it's solid. But there's not a whole lot of cool stuff in my mind coming out every day about virtual learning. What am I going to do? Tweet about, oh, this kid got their test done? Like, this is the changes that I'm seeing in these kids when they get involved in a solid esports program at school. One that, again, we're trying to make it as diverse as we possibly can. We're inviting kids in. We're trying to have the kids see themselves and the general managers and the adults in the room. Once you start to see that, and you see that this is giving some of these kids who have been so disenfranchised or didn't feel a spot in the community, like when I think it was on the same, I don't think you all were on the same panel, but Arabian Prince was talking about how growing up in Compton, he was a big old gaming nerd, but he couldn't be because that was culturally not okay for him to be. So again, he just happened to parlay it into NWA, but we've got a number of kids who also feel that same way in their own homes, even like they don't feel they don't feel comfortable in their skin being in their own home. And that's the hardest thing I think to hear in all this. And again, as you're saying, the abilities to now brand yourself and make a major impact with that is just phenomenal. Let me ask you this too, because this was something you messaged me, and it was in reference to the popular kids and doing what the popular, and the popular kids are still kind of leading the discussion here. How hard is it? I guess, I mean, it is until it's unpopular until it's not, I don't know. How does the kid who says, again, they come to you and say, hey, I want to be like Ninja. Again, what the advice we give is put it in perspective, but how do you have that kid help to find their own footing, their own brand, their own edge? How do you, what is there a question we can ask or a way we can frame it to them so that maybe it gets them thinking not so much of reflecting, but becoming something else?
That is the challenge that I've been trying to figure out as well, because and speaking at high schools, I see the kids that are disenfranchised, the kids that aren't necessarily cool, the kids that don't like their voice, they don't like the pimples on their face, or they don't like the clothes that their parents have picked out or allow them to wear. And that has crushed the confidence in themselves because they aren't really who they want to be or be seen as. So how can I empower someone to have a voice in their authenticity if they don't like who they authentically are yet?
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things that we have to deal with. Again, and as you see it, the way I hear it is, I've seen parents. I'll ask the first question I ask a kid, a student who comes to me. I'll say, "Well, what video games do you play?" And what's really crazy is that kid will look at the parent like, "Is it okay to answer that question?" and I go, no. Tell me what games you play, because I probably play them too. And I think for a kid to have somebody like you, or somebody who they see themselves in, or an adult who comes in and says, hey, it's okay to be who you are, they'll like the things that you like and celebrate it. I do this podcast because I love doing this podcast. I love talking to people like yourself and being able to just explore this idea of esports and education and all the different facets that come onto it. And Derek, I really appreciate that you took the time to step into an educationally focused, esports podcast and kind of share some knowledge with us. Is there any place else or tips or tricks or ideas you can give away right now and maybe help out that teacher who may be struggling with a kid who is just not seeing themselves in esports, or maybe trying to figure out who they are as far as, like you said, marketing, branding, or everywhere in between?
I think the main tip that I can give is help that child build confidence in some type of skill set that they have within themselves, champion that, and then that will allow them to have a foundation on where their confidence can be within who they authentically are. You might not be able to knock that out in one sitting or two, but building that foundation for them to recognize that, oh, I'm good either at the game, I'm good at the content creation, I'm good at giving reviews or being a thought leader within this space, or even I'm good at supporting someone else who is good in these other areas. That is my voice and who I am. And then also find a way to empower these kids of realizing that time keeps ticking and time keeps progressing. And so even though you're in a situation or position in your life that you don't like or agree with, realize that you have the power to change that and go beyond that and not be defined by a certain period of time that you had no power over because you are a child.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point too. And I want to just make sure we emphasize that, again, take every moment that, if I'm hearing it right, take every moment that we have. These kids sometimes are looking for permission to do these things, right? Yes. They've been so conditioned in school to take in everything, take in the lesson, be told where to go, follow the bell schedule, also that. Very few of them have that entrepreneurial spirit or they have it, but they just haven't been told, hey, it's okay to have that spirit.
Yeah.
All right, Derek, where else, any final thoughts, last words, where else can people find out more about you or about High Point Gamer?
So our website is highpointgamer.com, all one word. Our social media, we're all the same. High Point Gamer on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok. Love to connect with you. That's also our gamer tag. So if you want to come and get your head bust on Overwatch or For Honor, definitely send us a request.
For me, I've just been playing a lot of Hades lately. That's been my game. So if you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend that one.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah. All right. Derek Watford, thank you so much for being a guest on the Academy of Esports podcast today.
Thank you again, James. Have a good day.
That will do it for this week on the Academy of Esports. I've been your host, James O'Hagan. Esports are organized competitive video games allowing schools to redefine their athletic culture, diversify opportunities for student participation, promote good physical and mental health, increase collegiate scholarship pathways, and play games. We can never forget the importance of play. The mission of the Academy of Esports is to support these ideals. The vision of the Academy of Esports is for all students to experience the fun and joy of playing competitive video games. You may follow me on Twitter at Jim O'Hagan. That's at JimOhhagan, and through the Academy of Esports account at TAO Esports. It's a great way to get the latest blog posts, podcast episodes, and news coming out of esports and education. And remember, you can continue your engagement by going to www.taoesports.com. You can also connect through Facebook at www.facebook.com/TAOesports. Thanks again for listening, and I look forward to our time again next week.